This week we read from the Torah portion called Nitzavim. It is the last Torah portion of 5776. This is it. So, sorry, it has to end like this. Sorry, I apologize. But yeah, so this is it's sort of a big deal. If you know about Nitzavim, it's part of Moses' 37-day-long speech in the book of Deuteronomy. We've been talking about that now since the book of the beginning of the book, and this is sort of the end. I mean, it's really after this there's a little more of an accounting, and then there's a poem at the end, and we're done. So it's sort of the end of the end, essentially. And for those of you who might know me, I'm a gigantic Moses lover. I'm a huge fan of Moses, and it's a complicated Torah portion because it's sort of the end for him. He sort of knows, and you'll hear it more tomorrow from our B'nai Mitzvah, that he sort of knows the second he's done speaking, really, he's done. I mean, he knows his death is upon him, and so it's complicated for us Moses lovers to sort of think of him in that way. And in this Torah portion, he does so many things. He makes these grand promises to the Israelites, particularly in explaining to them that if they follow a certain set of directions, pretty much like getting all the last minute crammed in mitzvot into the Israelites, if you follow these directions, you're good. Everything will be fine, essentially. This Torah portion, Nitzavim, is so important to us as a Reform movement that you're hearing it now, this week, and you're going to hear it again Yom Kippur morning. So that is the Torah portion that the Reform movement chose to be read Yom Kippur morning. So it's significant because you're going to be hearing it in chronological order now, and you're going to hear it again soon, on the 12th. And so Nitzavim means to stand or stand together, and there's this great sense where Moses says, like, we're standing together in this moment. It's a triumphant moment, and pretty much then Moses, through God, obviously says, you have choices. You can either go this way, the good path, or you can go this way, the bad path. So Moses is yelling at us for days. He's yelling at us through all of the book of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But particularly right now, he's yelling at us for 37 days, and he pretty much been saying, do this, do this, do this. And now Moses says, you get to pick, essentially, all this week's Torah portion. So, like I said, if you know that I'm a Moses lover, it's a complicated Torah portion for me. If you also know that I am a lover of Israel, then if you watched the Israeli news, you will know it's also a very difficult weekend for me because the former prime minister and president of Israel, Shimon Peres, died on Wednesday. He was 93, and he was the pinnacle, perhaps the sustaining force of Israel's the sort of ground of Israel from its inception, essentially. And so he died on Wednesday. The funeral was actually this morning in Israel time, Friday morning. And if you watch any of the news coverage, incredible dignitaries from around the world, including Bill Clinton, including President Obama, and so many other people were at the funeral this morning. Clinton actually began his remarks by saying, essentially, if you haven't watched the remarks from Clinton and from Obama, take 25 minutes of your day and watch it. It's unbelievably fabulous. And the scene is incredible because there's Israeli flags behind both of them during their speech, and it's breathtaking. It's complicated and painful, but breathtaking. And so Clinton pretty much opens up by saying, this is Israel's first day ever without Shimon Peres. Ever. Right? Because he was there before the state was founded. He was there with the founding of the state. And now this is the first time Israel has ever been without. They're kind of like their Moses. They have been without Shimon Peres for the first time. And so it's a very, very, very complicated feeling in Israel. He was very loved, a loved human. He was a complicated politician because of his love. He was a loving man, and so because of a loving man, he felt like everyone should love each other, and so he pushed various pieces of Israel's government that maybe didn't like to be pushed in that way. So he was complicated, but he was lovely. And so I want to share with you, if you don't mind, just a couple of pieces that I found throughout different articles about Shimon Peres, because he was. Since I grew up knowing anything about Israel, one of the first names I ever heard, probably when I was 4 and 5 years old, was Shimon Peres, all the way throughout my life. And so I'll start with this great quote from him, by the way, from 2013, where he says, "I'm sure I will see peace in my lifetime," he said, "even if I should have to extend my life for a year or two. I won't hesitate," he said, on his 90th birthday. He said, "because I'm going to see this happen, people. I'm going to see peace in this land," which unfortunately he did not yet. But I want to start with that. Here is some other remarks. If Shimon Peres had opened his eyes on the day after his stroke — he had a stroke about 2 weeks ago. If Shimon Peres had opened his eyes on the day after his stroke and seen the newspaper headlines, he surely would have protested. The headline said, "Fighting for my life," and a picture of him. No way is what this commentary says. Fighting, okay, but not for my life. It's for our lives and for our country. It's for the future that I'm fighting for all the years of my life fighting for this country. Never about him, always about Israel. He was an ageless man. He was a boy who skipped a grade, later to become the old man among the young. When he met John F. Kennedy at the White House, Barack Obama was a year and a half old. That is the significance of his history that connects to the land of Israel. He wasn't indifferent. That was his eternal advantage in the endless search for his new paths. But it was also his disadvantage because he worried too much about what he said and what people thought about him. He was a very complicated man. And Peres once said, "There were 3 things I promised to Ben Gurion," he said. Right? We know Ben Gurion? Yes? All right, good. So he said that I would never say no to anything, that I would never speak ill of another person, and that I would never seek anything for myself. He said that's the promise that he made to Ben Gurion. And the last thing from this one little section is that he outlasted Golda, Ben Gurion, Eshkol, Moshe Dayan, Rabin, Alon, Nassar, Ansar Adat, King Hussein, Kennedy. And Bill Clinton said this. He said, all of them were buried, and only Peres remained. Striving to fulfill what Bill Clinton said is that he will eulogize all of us, because it was him that sort of carried this torch. Netanyahu, the prime minister, and Abbas, who is, we know Abbas, met for the first time in 6 years today at Peres' funeral. A feat every world power had tried to achieve up until now. It took Shimon Peres to get them to meet today for the first time, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. Shimon Peres managed to do in his death what no leader has ever done, bringing together the Palestinian Authority president, Mahmoud Abbas, and Netanyahu. The commentary said the funeral isn't expected to turn into a Netanyahu-Abbas summit, but it was the first time in 6 years they even were in the same room together. Peres' funeral was not a farewell to a farewell to one of Israel and the world's greatest statesmen, but also was not just that, but it was this ability for him to bring all these leaders together who identified him as the peacemaker. Peres didn't have the privilege of seeing his dream of peace come true in his lifetime. The Oslo Accord that he crafted wasn't completed. The disengagement from Gaza wasn't completed, which he supported and helped to pass in the Knesset. And the phrase that he said is, "I wasn't able to turn Gaza Strip into Hong Kong like I planned." But world leaders admire Peres because he worked tirelessly and he sought to promote the peace process. And Bill Clinton also, one of his last remarks, he said, he was the final member of Israel's founding generation. It was him. He was the essence of what the core of Israel was. And so what do we do with all this? What do we do with Moses? What do we do with Peres? What do we do with these two leaders, clearly with some time in between them, with some years between them, but great significance? What do we do? We learn from Moses in this week's Torah portion. We learn about dedication. We learn about love. We learn about passion that he had for the Israelites to get us to the promised land, which he never could enter, almost like Peres couldn't see peace. He taught us about legacy, about Joshua, passing on the torch to Joshua. And he taught us that we have to stand together, all of us, to this moment. This is what Moses taught us. Peres, he taught us the same, dedication and love and passion. And he tried to get us. I think of Peres as the literal phrase, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And I think he spent his life leading horses to water, over and over and over, hoping that they would drink. And so, today was this very complicated day. And if you know your Torah, and if you know at the end of the book of Genesis, well, the middle of the book of Genesis, if you know the story of Abraham, and he had two sons. He had one named Ishmael and one named Isaac. Ishmael becomes the father of Islam, essentially, and Isaac is us, right? The Jewish people. And so there's a little part that if you don't know it, you miss it, that when Abraham dies, both sons come to bury their father. It's the time they reunite. It's when Isaac and Ishmael, after being gone for so long, come back and are united to bury their father together. And so this might be one of those moments, possibly one of those moments for us to sort of bring Isaac and Ishmael a little closer together, possibly in this world, and maybe through the magic, not of Abraham, not of Moses, but of Shimon Peres, who was able to do this. And so maybe the coolest part of the coolest video you have to see is a 21-second video of Sara Netanyahu, Bibi's wife. At the end, when they're sort of schmoozing, she grabs a hold of Abbas and she says, "You know what? It's been too long. We have to have you over to the house." Is what Sara Netanyahu says to Abbas. And so who knows what that means, and who knows what that looks like, but just the fact that Peres could bring that conversation about speaks volumes about Peres. Whether you like that or not, it speaks volumes about Peres, because he was the one who was able to do that. No one else on the planet Earth could have set up a situation where Sara Netanyahu says, "You should come to the house. Yeah, we'll come over. We'll have some drinks, we'll have some dinner." Yeah. Only Peres, in his death, could do that. And so, on this Shabbat, when we think a little bit of Peres, a little bit of Moses, sort of at their final steps, and we enter the high holidays, and we're repenting, and we're praying, and we're fasting, let's remember and learn from the legacies of these people, from the groundwork that they set forth for us, for our path in Judaism from Moses up until this point, and throughout our lives, and through the path that Peres paves for us. And so we can learn from his legacies from around all of us, and so maybe one day we can work to make our own legacies, that we can make these connections. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yisher Koach. Wow.